Better sleep is the gift that keeps on giving. 8 Sleep is the maker of the pod cover. It fits over your existing mattress like a fitted sheet, lets you control your bed's temperature. It can keep you cool at night as low as 55 degrees Fahrenheit, or it can keep you warm and cozy during the winter, as warm as 110 degrees. You can set each side of the bed to a different temperature. 8 Sleep is having their biggest sale of the year. Until November 30th, 8 Sleep is giving my audience $500 off any pod cover bundle. Go to 8sleep.com/Pakman. The link is below. We have new GDP numbers in the United States from the third quarter. The numbers are extraordinary. 5.2% annualized growth from Q3. These are numbers that it must be somehow terrible for Joe Biden. I'm sure Republicans will figure out a way to explain to us why these excellent GDP growth numbers are terrible for Joe Biden, but I don't really know what the case to be made is yet. Here is a report from CNBC. U.S. GDP grew at a 5.2% rate in the third quarter, even stronger than first indicated. GDP is, as we've discussed before, a measure of all goods and services produced during the 3-month period. It accelerated at a 5.2% annualized pace. This topped the initial 4.9% reading and is better than the 5% forecast from economists polled by Dow Jones. What was the oranges of this? Well, the upward revision came from increases in non-residential fixed investment that includes structures, equipment, and intellectual property, where there was a 1.3% increase after decreasing at previous times. Consumer spending saw a downward revision, so it's not all perfect news, rising 3.6% compared to a 4% estimate. Still, a 3.6% increase in consumer spending is considered very good. Now, let me do a good disclaimer here, because if I don't do it, people will write to me and they'll say, David, when you're reporting on these numbers, you're ignoring the plight of the middle class. You're ignoring that 40% of Americans would have to go into debt to meet an unexpected expense of a few hundred or $1,000. You're ignoring wage stagnation. I'm not ignoring it. This is primarily a political program. And the political reality in the United States dating back decades is that when by these very measures the economy is doing well, presidents tend to get reelected. It's not a guarantee of anything. It's not a panacea. We still have in the United States extraordinary inequality, lack of access to health care and housing, and in some cases food. All sorts of problems that we need to solve. In fact, this GDP growth, the great majority of the profits that are implicit in that GDP growth go to the disproportionately wealthy and super wealthy. Nothing changes about that. I'm not ignoring that. I'm a social democrat. I am aware and concerned about all of those realities. The point here, as we are now just over 11 months from a presidential election, is that by just about every important economic metric, this is a pretty good economy. It's not a perfect economy, but we see now that the infrastructure bill of Joe Biden has at least something to do when you look at structures and what is driving up GDP. When you look at the CHIPS Act, when you look at other smaller economic achievements of the Biden administration, they aren't solely responsible for this. Much of this is based on global economic conditions and business cycles and so many different things. But the argument that Bidenomics is destroying the economy certainly falls flat. Now, on the other hand, we haven't seen the nude pictures of Hunter Biden. So maybe that'll have an impact as well on how people vote in November. And I'm sort of joking when I say that, but the point I continue to come back to is if you really zoom out and you say, okay, forget about Biden being 80 and forget about Trump being a former president who incited a riot and is now running again, but he's facing criminal trials. And what will that do to his campaign ability? Zoom out, okay? 30,000 foot level. If the economy remains more or less like this, to me, it inspires confidence that the person in the Oval Office who oversaw that is likely to be reelected. Now, I saw a funny comment about this. That is something along the lines of, most Americans don't care about GDP. They care about the prices of the things they need. Well, the great news about that is that inflation was 0 in October, and it's now down to 3.2% over the last 12 months, right in there with what is considered ideal between 2 and 3%. So these are truly strong numbers. Trump used to brag about 4% GDP growth. And if let's give Trump a mulligan on the COVID year, forget about that. In 2017, Trump oversaw 2.3% GDP growth. In 2018, Trump oversaw 3%. In 2019, he had 2.2%. These numbers put us on track for over 5% annualized GDP growth, with inflation coming down, wages up, a nice stock market, and unemployment extraordinarily low. So the question then becomes, where does the right go next? I'm going to show you. They go to, oh no, unemployment is up to 3.9%. Let's discuss that next. We had a situation before the last unemployment report where you were starting to see right-wingers argue that the unemployment rate is too low. Now, I have no interest in dismissing that concern out of hand, although the Republicans saying it are cynically looking for ways to attack the economic record of Joe Biden. You can have a situation in which, if the unemployment rate is too low and there aren't people out of jobs looking for jobs, that it can limit the ability of companies to grow because they have nobody to hire. You can make that argument. That's not a crazy argument to make. Republicans are only making it because it's Joe Biden in the White House overseeing a record period of sub 4% unemployment, but it's a legitimate economic question that you could ask. I'm going to play a clip for you now of Guy Reschenthaler, this is a Republican member of Congress, attacking Joe Biden because the unemployment rate went up to 3.9%. I thought you guys wanted the unemployment rate to go up. You're part of the contingent that's arguing this labor market has no wiggle room. There's nobody to hire. Companies can't grow. We need slightly higher unemployment. Well, you got it. And now they go after Biden because the unemployment rate went up, by the way, to an extraordinarily historically low number. Listen to this pathetic guy.
With the economy adding just 1,500 jobs in October.
Now, I'm sorry, I have to stop. The economy did not add 1,500 jobs in October. The economy added 150,000 jobs in October. Are his notes wrong? Did his brain glitch? Is he lying? I don't know. But understand that number is wrong. The number is 150,000.
With the economy adding just 1,500 jobs in October, coming in below expectations, this is the second worst jobs report of the Biden presidency.
See what he did there? It's the second worst jobs report of the Biden presidency, which has seen record job growth. It's sort of like saying every month the jobs report has been really good, but this last one, among a whole bunch of really good jobs reports, was less good. It's so dishonest, and these people are such partisan hacks.
The unemployment rate rose to 3.9% in October, while the labor force participation rate actually declined. That hurts people that are driving to work, driving to construction sites, driving to work shifts at diners. It's not hurting the woke yuppie base that the Democrats represent, sitting at home on Zoom all day, having their EVs charging in their garage.
There you go. All these woke yuppies with their electric vehicles, working from home, blah, 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 blah. These attacks are particularly funny because they're increasingly falling flat. There was a point 6 months ago where Americans really didn't have a particularly positive view about the economy. And people like me who were just looking at the numbers in a very objective way were saying, the numbers don't seem to be entering the brains of some of these people because things are, quite frankly, looking pretty okay. That tide is starting to turn. And on the economy, the number of Americans who believe the economy is going in the right direction and is doing well is growing and growing. If you want to zoom out from every other what you might call secondary issue when it comes to how people vote. The economy still, perception of how the economy is doing remains at the top of the list. And increasingly, Americans understand the economy is doing pretty well. Doesn't mean it's perfect. This particular attack, the unemployment rate went up to 3.9, is coming from people who were arguing just 2 months ago that the unemployment rate was too low. We need to cool things off. We need a slight uptick in unemployment. Well, we got it. And now they're saying, well, that's actually bad. This is MAGA math. Unemployment under 4% for the longest stretch in 50 years, down from the 6.3% unemployment we had when Joe Biden took over from Donald Trump. Wages are up, and they want to say that things are bad. Now, this is not cheerleading, and this is not ignoring the plight of so many Americans. There are so many people who can't meet unexpected expenses, can't pay their health care bills. That's mostly related to another issue in the country, but we'll talk about that as well. I don't care who's president, okay? I readily have said the first few years of Trump, the economy was also doing relatively well. Not quite as well as it did under Obama, but it was doing relatively well. I have no issue admitting that. Most of this isn't directly related to what the president does. To some degree, it is. Infrastructure bill, CHIPS Act certainly have helped the economy. But Biden is not ultimately primarily responsible for this. But the argument that he would destroy it is falling very flat. It's just numbers and data. And numbers and data are a threat to ideology, and they are a threat to narrative. And that's why now you've got Guy Riefenstaller saying disaster, unemployment up to a still historically low 3.9%. Our sponsor, 8 Sleep, is having their biggest sale of the year. 8 Sleep makes the pod cover, which improves your sleep by adjusting your bed's temperature based on your individual needs. It slips over your bed like a fitted sheet. You can't even feel that it's there, fits over the entire bed. You can set each side to a different temperature. I hate getting hot at night. My girlfriend is always cold at night. So this is why the 8 Sleep has been such a lifesaver. I can stay cool, wake up more refreshed. She can stay warm. The science has shown us, for many people, staying cool improves your sleep. The pod cover goes as cold as 55 degrees. You can set it to go as warm as 110 degrees, which can be nice in the wintertime if you like that sort of thing. Until November 30th, 8 Sleep is offering my audience $500 off. When you build a bundle with the pod cover, go to 8sleep.com/Pakman for these exclusive holiday savings. And listen to this, 8 Sleep currently ships within the USA, Canada, the UK, select EU countries, and Australia. The link is down below. 3 quick announcements here before we move on. Number 1, my plan is to stream the Newsom-DeSantis debate tonight starting at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. Fox News may shut me down again. We're going to try to stream it. I hope you will join me. Number 2, we are now at 1.988 million YouTube subscribers. We are, let me do some quick math, 11,383 away. Call it 12,000. We can do this by Monday, okay? So if you are not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. Let's get over that 2 million number. And then number 3, when we get to that 2 million, we are going to do an absolute blowout membership special to celebrate. These are going to be the lowest rates of the year, especially before rates go up when the new website launches. To be notified of the 2 million subscriber membership special, just get on my newsletter at davidpakman.com. All right, you would think that the freeing of hostages previously held by the terrorist group Hamas would just be a good thing, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Well, it turns out that Trump brown-noser and Fox News disinformation specialist Maria Bartiromo couldn't do it. She couldn't just say, hey, you know what? Joe Biden helped get the hostages out, and that's a good thing. She comes up with a conspiracy theory about preference for a particular hostage because an Israeli American who was captive's aunt once bought a piece of art made by Hunter Biden. If you can't follow this pond scum trash, it's because that's what it is. Look at Maria Bartiromo, unable to just say, hey, you know what? Nice job. Nice job. Listen to this.
And, there's an awful story around the hostage release in Israel. Abigail Moore Idan, one of the many young children released by Hamas over the last 3 days, the first American toddler released on Sunday. She has dual citizenship, American-Israeli. I mean, her story is a travesty. She's an orphan. She watched her parents get murdered by these
I feel a butt coming.
monsters. Thank God she has been released. But we also
But, what is the but, Maria? Tell us.
learn that her family is major donors to President Biden, and that her aunt actually bought Hunter Biden's art. I mean, of course we want Abigail to get released and to be home with her family. And that we're
not sick people.
Praying and thanking God for. But why was she
Thanking God. What about thanking Biden, maybe?
Was she the first one because she had this connection to Biden?
We're glad she's released, but it's an interesting
We're glad she's released, but a lot of buts here.
web of what we have been uncovering, both in judiciary oversight.
Nothing has been uncovered. Nothing has been uncovered. Actually, I'm going to tell you something else. One of the things that experts in hostage negotiations have been saying since October 7th is we should in general be careful in media reports to talk too much about specific hostages because Hamas monitors this stuff. And there's a story now, I don't want to get the details wrong, but it's a story about I believe it's two little boys, redheaded boys, who were believed to have been held by Hamas. There were many stories about them. And now Hamas is pulling this thing where they go, oh, no, we don't know anything. We don't have those boys. We think they were killed by an Israeli airstrike. Must have been. We don't know anything about them. And of course, now we don't know what to believe because obviously Hamas is aware that certain hostages get attention and are discussed. And so Maria's idea that in any way prominence of a particular hostage is likely to generate a better outcome runs completely counter to what hostage negotiation experts actually say, because you're giving Hamas something that maybe they can manipulate or do more with. Now, bigger picture, all told, nearly 100 hostages will have been released, maybe already. There's a time difference. Within very soon, we will have about 100 hostages released, thanks in part to the efforts of Joe Biden. The ceasefire is also expected to be extended, and Joe Biden putting pressure and warning Israel, listen, err on the side of the ceasefire and on the extension of this, err on the side of not overplaying your hand in Gaza, etc. It's to some degree something that Joe Biden does deserve credit for. But what about one person who bought Hunter Biden's art? These are desperate, sick people. They are weaving conspiracy theories about Hunter Biden, which is their hammer is Hunter Biden. And so everything looks like a nail to them. Oh, something about Joe Biden and China? Hunter Biden. Let's try to hammer that nail in. Something about hostages being released by Hamas terrorists? Oh, let's try to bring in Hunter Biden. We see it as a nail. Let's take out our hammer. These are sick, disgusting people. And as I've said, I know I've said it many times, with Maria Bartiromo, she used to be a good business reporter. And it is truly vile what she has become. And the Republican, I don't even remember who this guy is. This is some congressman, just nodding along with her. Yeah, we're uncovering tons of stuff here that's concerning. Truly sick people. Elon Musk suffered a complete and total meltdown yesterday while being interviewed by Andrew Ross Sorkin and started yelling at people in the crowd who might be Twitter advertisers or former Twitter advertisers. F you. F you, don't advertise. I've never seen anything like this. This really seems like a guy who's not well. The discussion here at the Deal Book Summit was a very interesting discussion, which was Andrew Ross Sorkin, who I think does good interviews, as good as the interviews Maria Bartiromo used to do 20 years ago, right? He does good interviews with business people. And he brought up this issue of, advertisers are leaving because of this perceived anti-Semitic retweet and comment and signal boost that you participated in. What do you say to the advertisers? And Elon melts down and starts swearing and saying they can go F themselves. You will notice Andrew Ross Sorkin silent at many moments. I think he was shocked by what Elon Musk was saying. And then you'll see later what a CEO of Twitter, now called X, Linda Yaccarino, said about this, trying to do damage control. This is a guy who's off his rocker. Look at this.
Obviously, you know that there's a public perception that, and you're clarifying this now, but there's a public perception that that was part of a apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
Here's where Andrew Ross Sorkin starts to get confused. And he's like, wait a second. You own the company, but you don't want advertisers? What are you talking? It's like it doesn't even compute for Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go yourself.
Now, I don't know if he was expecting a rousing cheer from the crowd, but everybody is like, what is wrong with this guy?
But go yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
That's a reference believed to be to Bob Iger, one of the CEOs who has pulled advertising.
Well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel.
Andrew Ross Sorkin here trying to not laugh at how, again, Elon Musk is just destroying Twitter with every statement he makes.
Don't advertise.
How do you think then about the economics of X? If part of the underlying model, at least today, and maybe it needs to shift, maybe the answer is it needs to shift away from advertising. If you believe that this is the one part of your business where you will be beholden to those who have this view, what do you do?
GFY.
GFY, he said. Go F yourself.
I understand that, but there's a reality too, right?
Yes. No.
I mean, Linda Yaccarino's right here, and she's got to sell advertising.
Absolutely. So, totally. No. Actually, what this advertising boycott is going to do, it's going to kill the company.
Right. The company's boycotting Twitter. And now, I don't even, is he saying it'll kill Twitter or it'll kill the companies not advertising?
And do you think that
and the whole world will know that those advertisers killed the company, and we will document it in great detail.
Oh, so I think what he's saying is if all of these advertisers do bail, it will kill Twitter, but then they'll document that these companies killed Twitter. And then I guess people will be mad or something.
But those advertisers, I imagine, are going to say, we didn't kill the company.
Oh, yeah?
They're going to say,
tell it to Earth.
But they're going to say, Elon, that you killed the company because you said these things and that they were inappropriate things and that they didn't feel comfortable on the platform, right? That's what they're going to say.
And let's see how Earth responds to that.
Earth. Let's see how Mars responds to it. Why not, right?
The United States will be the first nation to land an astronaut on Mars.
All right. This is crazy. I mean, the environment in the room is as bizarre as, I mean, you can tell how bizarre the environment is in the room. He truly has destroyed the platform. He's blaming everybody else. And this is the funniest part. Linda Yaccarino, the CEO of Twitter, then had to go and do damage control. Here's how she summed up this total meltdown by Elon Musk. She said, quote, "Today, Elon Musk gave a wide-ranging and candid interview at DealBook 2023. He also offered an apology, an explanation, and an explicit point of view about our position," which I guess is go F yourself to the advertisers. It'll be really funny when Bob Iger buys Twitter for $2 billion after Elon Musk reduces its value by 95%. I don't know that will happen, but that's certainly one possible outcome, that after totally destroying it, somebody picks it up dirt cheap. This guy is not well. He truly has destroyed the platform. I actually, every once in a while, like once a week now, I'll just look at Twitter and just to see what's going on. There's just nothing. And I'm not saying that there aren't people putting good content up, but algorithmically, the stuff that's being promoted is just nonsense. It's nonsense. And he really has taken a platform that was useful and interesting in a lot of ways and made it unusable and apparently unprofitable as well. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Today, we welcome to the program Jake Angeli Chansley, who's a spiritual activist, shamanic practitioner, published author, entrepreneur, known to many in our audience, I'm sure, as the Q Shaman or QAnon Shaman. He was convicted and served some time for his role in the January 6th Trump riots, which I am sure we will also talk about. I really appreciate your time and you being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I think it's more like the deep state setup riots than Trump riots. I don't think Trump had people do that. I think it was more likely that the feds and the crowd and Antifa and BLM were largely responsible. And the police throwing tear gas and concussion grenades into a peaceful crowd, that probably had something to do with it too.
Well, hold on. Let's go through piece by piece because we have plenty of time to get to everything if we just do it sequentially. So in court, through your lawyers, as I reviewed the records, to some degree, you made the case that you were there because of Trump, right? So I'm interested in this conflict between clearly Trump did motivate you to be there, but also you're saying it was Antifa and the FBI. But aren't you evidence that that's not the case, Jake?
Well, my previous lawyer misrepresented me in pretty much every single way.
So, you denounced the arguments made by your lawyer.
Well, yeah, on a number of different occasions. He said things that I never asked him to say. I never felt duped by Trump, never said that. I'm not mentally ill, not bipolar, schizophrenic, delusional, or, depressed. None of that's true.
Okay, so your view as of today, regardless of the argument that was made in court, is that the events of January 6th were carried out by, tell me which groups it was again?
Well, it's actually, if you look at it objectively,
yes,
and you look at the setup that was very clearly there from a very early stage prior to January 6th, what you're going to find is that largely the parties responsible would be people like Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Yogananda Pittman, Mark Milley in the Pentagon, Christopher Wray in the FBI, and people in Antifa and BLM.
How do you know that any of that is true? What evidence do you have, for example, that Nancy Pelosi was involved in what happened that day?
Well, because if you look into the testimony of former Capitol Police Chief Sund, he had his emergency powers revoked by Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell prior to the January 6th events, and they had to go. He had to go through them in order to deploy the National Guard. And when he gave the written request for National Guard to be present, they denied it because it would be bad optics and there was lack of evidence. But the evidence was all there. He was just not given the evidence by Yogananda Pittman, by the FBI, and by the Pentagon. And that's according to his own testimony. That's also according to the testimony of former Capitol Police Lieutenant Tarek Johnson.
Yeah, I've reviewed their testimony and was not able to find that. It's sort of beyond the scope of this interview to look at it line by line. I guess big picture, Jake, why do you think that parties that supported Joe Biden would try to interfere with Joe Biden being made president? Why would they do that? It seems counterproductive, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is what you have to understand is that it was about creating a setup so that a psyop may ensue and the weaponization of the Justice Department, the DOJ, could then be used to go after Trump and his supporters.
But that's just a word salad, Jake. It doesn't address the crux of the question, does it?
No, it does. It does.
How?
And just allow me to address it. So because of the events of January 6th, there have been multitudes, thousands of Trump supporters that have been labeled domestic terrorists. And
because they showed up and committed crimes, though, right? Or you're saying they were tricked into doing so?
But with respect, David, that's not the same thing as committing acts of domestic terrorism in the way that there has been acts of domestic terrorism committed, say, for over 200 days all over the country during the 2020 riots by Antifa and BLM, who claimed in their own on their own websites that they wanted to overthrow the American
Jake,
capitalist
that's a
system
non
and
sequitur.
install a
That's
communist
I have to
government.
interrupt, Jake. I have to interrupt, Jake, because what you have to understand is, imagine that I was accused of attempted murder. It is of no importance whatsoever if a year prior someone else somewhere else also tried to kill someone. I can't use that as my defense. And what you're saying is that part of the defense of what the people on January 6th did is your perception of what BLM did a year earlier. That's not a valid defense.
No, what I'm saying, dude, is this.
Okay.
What we're talking about here is optics, okay? And they tried to make me, in particular, look as bad as humanly possible. They used all sorts of trigger words and trigger images to put a label on me and many other Trump supporters to circumvent our constitutional rights and to basically centralize power and use the levers of power in government to go after their political opponents.
Okay, let me ask you a real practical question about that. You're talking about being designated domestic terrorists. I want to be super specific here because I really want to understand your view on this. These cases like yours were federal cases. There is no official designation of domestic terrorism by the U.S. federal government. So who labeled you as such and where?
The Mockingbird media did all over the news, number one. And number two, are you telling me that when, say, the government is designating institutions like, say, the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers as domestic terrorist groups, or anybody for that matter that was flying into D.C.? I don't know if you're aware, but anybody that flew into D.C. in early January of 2021 is now being followed around by the U.S. Marshals on airplanes, and there are no U.S. Marshals on the FAA, on the airplanes all across the country because of this label.
You're doing a lot of whataboutism and changing topics.
This isn't whataboutism.
Let's just try. Hold on, Jake. Hold on. Let's conduct this interview in a sensible way. Okay. Let's stick with one of the things you said. When we finish with it, we'll go to the next thing. Okay. You said that many of the people charged for their alleged involvement on January 6th have been designated as domestic terrorists by the weaponized DOJ. I then said to you, there is no such designation by the U.S. government in the legal proceedings that you're talking about. So what do you mean they were designated domestic terrorists by the weaponized DOJ? You said, well, the Mockingbird media did it. So are you ready on... Hold on.
You talked about me.
Let me finish the question.
You said who labeled you that, and that's what I'm saying. Well, the Mockingbird media did.
You first said that the weaponized DOJ issued that label. When I told you no such label exists, you said it was actually the media. So from a legal standpoint, no one has designated
you're mixing
you
it up. That's not the case at all.
Okay.
What it is that I was saying what it is that I'm saying is that the DOJ has labeled numerous Trump supporters that were there on January 6th, and some people that weren't even there on January 6th, as domestic terrorists. And you
labeled
can
them how and where?
And I'll tell you, you can look into the testimony of Stephen Friend, the FBI whistleblower who came forward and was talking about how it is that the FBI is designating these people as domestic terrorists and then handing these cases to FBI field offices all over the country, as instead of treating it like it was one incident on one day at one location. And in this way, they're actually expanding their domestic terrorism investigations all over the country, creating the illusion that there is some sort of domestic terrorism threat from white Trump supporters.
Listen, it seems as though I don't want to spend the whole interview on this. As of 2 weeks ago, none of the individuals involved in the January 6th riots have been designated as domestic terrorists. There is no specific domestic terrorism statute, and none of the individuals that you're referring to have actually been designated in that way by the DOJ. People have heard your opinion. Hold on.
But David,
people heard your opinion. Now they've heard mine.
What about the terrorism enhancements that are being placed on their plea deals? Are you telling me that that isn't a classification?
There just is no such classification. If you want to give me a specific case, Jake, hold on.
Having these terrorism enhancements on their plea deals.
I would be glad to look at that and give my opinion, but you made a different claim to start with. That's a different claim altogether. Okay, it's just a different claim. It's just not the claim. Let me ask you this: you've said that some of the things said by your lawyer during your trial are not things you agreed with. Fine. Do you acknowledge that you did something wrong on that day and that you are the sole person responsible for that?
Yes, I've said that on several occasions. If you do your research, I've accepted responsibility. I've said that I broke the law. I should not have broken the law, and I've done my time, and I'm out now because I did my time and I had good time and good behavior in prison.
Just so you know, there's like a rattle going in the background. I don't know if you hear that. Oh, it just stopped. Do you blame anyone other than yourself for inducing, entrapping, or goading you into doing what you did on that day?
Not at all.
Just plain and simple, you don't blame anybody else?
No, I take full responsibility for my actions.
Okay. When it comes to some of the views that you have been associated with, I've seen, again, and this is from things your lawyer has said, so you tell me if you don't agree, that you have distanced yourself from like the QAnon Shaman stuff. You don't consider yourself a follower of QAnon. Like, is that true?
Well, QAnon is a label and a straw man created by the Mockingbird media, and they called me QAnon Shaman and had the audacity to say that's what I called myself. So
what I'm asking you is just about the views, not the label.
Well, dude, that really all depends on what you think Q views are. What do you think Q views are?
I think the biggest overriding view is that there is a sort of conspiracy of child abuse and pedophilia that is carried out by so-called elites, the deep state and Democrats, which Donald Trump was chosen by God to become president and then stop.
Okay, so I don't necessarily agree with all of that, but if you look into Jeffrey Epstein and what he was doing, if you look into the finders, if you look into the Franklin cover-up, if you look into the testimony of Ronald Bernard, if you look into the Barney Frank scandal, if you look into the Michael Aquino military base scandals, if you look into the numerous scandals that are coming out now regarding all these people that debunked Pizzagate, and now they're being arrested and charged with child porn charges and child abuse charges, then it's quite clear that there is some sort of an elite sex trafficking pedophilia ring in DC, in Hollywood. If you look into the testimony of Corey Feldman, if you look into the testimony of a lot of these young people that were groomed in Hollywood and raped at young ages, then it's quite clear that there is some sort of elite child sex trafficking going on.
So you do believe that?
Well, you don't?
No, I've not seen any evidence of that whatsoever.
So I just gave you all of these facts. I just gave you all these things that you can look up. And if you don't look it up, you're not doing your due diligence as a journalist.
Well, we can look up. So this is what's called the setting small fires conundrum. Okay. I have investigated Pizzagate and QAnon to a degree that I think is completely reasonable, and have looked at some, but not all of the things you just mentioned. The thing that becomes difficult is you are extremely skeptical of accepting any official source for any claim, but at the same time, you argue that if I'm not familiar with every proverbial small fire that you've just set, that certainly what you're saying must be true, even though you're also not citing any sources for these things. It's tough to have a real conversation when someone does that, you know?
Well, look into the government website on the finders. This has been declassified. The CIA was trafficking children for satanic ritual abuse, keeping them in cages. They were abducting children off the street, and this was the whistle was blown by the FBI.
I'll look into that.
Okay,
I'll look into that.
Now look into the Franklin cover-up. That's where the rising Republican star Lawrence King was trafficking children out of CPS and forcing them into satanic rituals while they did cocaine and molested children. Okay, look into the Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino in charge of psychological warfare and mind control for the Army, look into his scandals on military bases.
Listen,
look
we
into the Barney
can't
Frank
possibly
scandal.
do all of these things here. What I will tell you is, but hold on, just as an example, we have to do this in a way that makes sense for the audience, Jake, okay? So if you want to come back, give me the full list of stuff and we can investigate it. The one I've investigated that you mentioned is the Franklin conspiracy. There is essentially no credible evidence that what you just described is going on. It has been investigated deeply. There are documents people can find. We can't make this about Franklin conspiracy. You mentioned one I'm familiar with, and what I'm telling you is everything you've said is disputed and, in my opinion, not backed by evidence. Let me get to the second part. You believe a bunch of the first stuff I said. Do you believe Trump was sent by God to solve that problem?
I don't necessarily think that that is a accurate portrayal of. I think that we're all here on God's will, but I'll say that much.
Okay. Do you think Trump maybe was sent by God to deal with it?
Dude, I think everybody was sent here by God to do something.
Okay. But you have no evidence that Trump was sent here specifically to stop the ring of pedophilia you just described.
No, what kind of evidence would there be?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the same kind you're citing for all this other stuff, which is none.
Oh, give me a break, David.
Okay. Hey, so you're now running for a congressional seat. Talk to me about what is the platform? What are you bringing to the table? Why would you be a good member of Congress?
Because I'm actually going to represent the American people. The first 4 things that I'm going to introduce to the House floor is a single bill voting law, an amendment for term limits for congressmen and staff, a criminalization of lobbying, and 7-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for insider trading. And believe me, there's a much longer list to go along with that, but those are the first 4 things I intend to do.
Do you think that your criminal past is going to be useful or maybe hurtful in this campaign?
Well, the fact of the matter is I don't have a criminal past. I have 1 felony for which that is the only crime I've ever committed in my life. And no, I don't think it's going to be a hindrance whatsoever.
Why not? Don't you think that it's something that may make people say, well, hold on a second. Is this the sort of person we want representing us?
Well, considering that all the people that are quote unquote representing the American people right now are probably criminals themselves, considering all the insider trading and all the cocaine and orgies then all the hookers that they hire, then, right. I probably don't see that is going to be a problem at all.
All right. Well, we're going to follow it with interest. A couple other things I want to talk about. I don't want to simply and flippantly ascribe the label conspiracy theorist to you, because it can sometimes be a label that just stops conversation, and I want to have a conversation. But I do want to ask you about some other beliefs and see sort of like, what is the network of beliefs? You've talked to us a little bit about QAnon. It has been said by prosecutors that you believe you are an alien or a higher being of some kind. Is that true? Is that a belief you hold?
As a shamanic practitioner, I have a hyperdimensional consciousness that stretches far beyond the bounds of my physical body.
So that's a yes, it sounds like.
Well, do you know what a bodhisattva is?
Generally speaking, yeah. Sort of a spiritual figure of sorts that people may follow, yeah.
Well, kind of. It's a spiritual being that attains a certain level of enlightenment, but reincarnates over and over again consciously until the all of humanity is enlightened and brought into an ascended level of consciousness. I am a bodhisattva.
All right. So it sounds like you do believe you are a higher being of sorts.
Well, I think we all have the capacity to be quote unquote higher beings. I think we all are higher beings. I'm just more conscious of it than others.
Fair. When it comes to vaccination, I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were discharged from the military for refusing an anthrax vaccination. I'm curious, are you, assuming that's true, and you'll tell me if it's not, are you against all vaccines or only certain ones?
Well, what I'm against is trusting people that have openly espoused their eugenic beliefs to manufacture vaccines for the mass populations of the planet. And considering the Rockefeller family and considering people like Bill Gates, who are behind a lot of these vaccines, are admitted eugenicists, I don't trust them one little bit at all to give me or anybody a vaccine.
So it's not that you reject the science of vaccination as a principle, the inoculation. You just don't like who's making the vaccines because you believe that they have genocidal goals?
The principle behind vaccines is sound for the most part. However, the ingredients that are being put in modern vaccines by these eugenicist-owned companies are detrimental to human health.
Like what ingredient?
Oh, things like, formaldehyde, things like dead fetal tissue, things like, mercury-based compounds that penetrate the blood-brain barrier, all sorts of stuff that's in there, preservatives for the microbiological life forms. There's all sorts of stuff in these vaccines. Just look at the list and look at the ingredients.
But you know that,
vaccines.
Jacob, we can't do every single one of these. But like the dead fetal tissue in vaccines, you know that that's not true. There were stem cell lines obtained from fetal tissue used to research and develop the vaccines. But you're suggesting like they're injecting a piece of a dead baby into everybody. That's crazy. You've got to see that that's crazy.
No. You see, you're clearly not doing your research, but that's okay.
I've researched. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Debate you on it right now.
I'm sorry. You said you're not equipped to debate me on that right now.
No. What I'm saying is that because of our time constraints, dude, I'll argue into the 9th hour, but our time constraints won't allow it.
But to be clear, I'm saying pieces of dead babies are not an ingredient in the vaccines. You're saying that they are.
No, what I'm saying is dead fetal tissue.
Yes.
As in cells from dead babies.
Tissue, right?
Okay,
it's part of a dead baby.
Used, and that also goes into our food. That goes into our food as well. So it's like you can't deny it. The science is there. This is what these pharmaceutical companies do.
Okay. I think it can be denied on the basis that there's no evidence for it, but it sounds like we're not necessarily.
Yeah, that's what they say about the election too.
Right. I think Joe Biden won. That's true.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Hey, in the limited time we have left, do you regret what you did on January 6th? Aside from, I know you've said, you've already talked a little bit about it and you said you're responsible, etc. Would everybody have been better off, including you, if you had just never gone on that day?
I think everybody in the country would be better off if the government didn't set things up the way that they did. But did they set you up to go? Because you've taken responsibility. You went because you wanted to go. So why is it that now you blame the government? I know. What I'm saying, dude, is that it was a setup on behalf of the deep state. If they allowed the National Guard to be there, it never would have happened. Okay? And regarding this notion of regrets, I don't regret anything in life, even though I've made several mistakes, because regret is far too heavy a burden to carry forward into the future. You can either make a mistake and not learn from it, or you can make a mistake and learn from it. And then at that point, it's not a mistake, it's a lesson. And I've learned many lessons throughout my life, and I am better for it.
Are there any lessons you learned from being there on January 6th that are about you rather than about, like, I know you could very easily say, well, I learned how powerful the deep state is. Okay, that's a dead end for our conversation. Are there any lessons about you that you learned from having been there that day?
Yeah.
And what lesson is that?
That I'm far stronger than I could have possibly imagined, and God is guiding me in every single footstep I take.
All right. I think that is a good note to end our interview on. We've been speaking with Jake Angeli Chansley, who is not only a spiritual activist, but also now running for Congress. Jake, I appreciate your time. We don't have to agree on everything for the conversation to be useful, and we're going to be following your campaign very closely.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Take care. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. For all the fear-mongering and panic about 2024 polling, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, we have a new poll, a quality poll from Morning Consult, which shows that Joe Biden has opened up a lead within the margin of error, admittedly, over Donald Trump. This story is less about the particulars of this poll, although we will look at the poll, but more about the approach that I think we need to have. And in general, it would be more useful for media to have about polling relative to the way that it is all being discussed. So here is the new poll. This is a Morning Consult poll tracking the 2024 presidential election. Among all voters, Biden 43, Trump 42. Now, very important here. 11% say they will be voting for someone else. And then 5% say they don't yet know who they will be voting for. The entire election, as we are 11 months out, could potentially rest on that 16% that's in the middle. 11 and 5, 16% total. Now, among some other groups, I do think it's interesting to see 84% of Democrats say they plan to vote for Joe Biden. It looks like 11% are either planning on voting for someone else or don't know. Among independents, Trump is +4. And among Republicans, Trump has 86% of the vote. Also, potentially a sign of trouble, 83% of those who voted for Biden last time say they will vote Biden again, whereas 86% of those who voted Trump last time say they will vote for Trump again. So if you want to have the most concerning possible interpretation of this, it would be it's going to be close, but it's looking like Republicans are leaning towards Trump a little more than Democrats are leaning towards Biden. And Biden's voters from 2020 are not leaning towards him quite as much as those who voted for Trump in 2020 are leaning. I'm going to be super honest with you. I struggle to look at this and to be super, super worried. And I'll tell you why. Historically, when the economy is solid by the metrics we all now are familiar with, the incumbent president gets reelected. When Trump officially becomes the nominee, he's not even officially the nominee yet. He almost certainly will be. When Trump officially becomes the nominee, I expect that a ton of the Biden voters who aren't sure what they'll do in 2024 are going to say, oh, no, we're not going back to Trump. And they will become solid Biden voters. I expect that many independents, 20% of whom right now say they're voting for someone else and 11% don't know. If just a few percent of those, once Trump becomes the nominee, say,